Here we go. 3, 2, 1, 1, 1.
Welcome to the Crypto Realm on the Paranormal UK Radio Network, radio to chill your soul. And tonight you've got myself, Deborah Hatswell from British Bigfoot, and Ron L. Murphy of the Goblin Universe. And we have Paul Sinclair on our show tonight, which is absolutely wonderful for me. Many of you will know Paul from the truthproof.webs.com website and also the Truth Proof books. But we've been very fortunate, we've been able to get Paul on, and we're going to have a chat to him tonight about not only dogmen and werewolves and ILFs and an amazing amount of things, and we're just going to have a chat and see where we go. So, hello, Paul. How are you?
Hello, Deborah. Hello, Ron. I'm good, thank you. And
hello, Mr. Sinclair. How are you?
All good, yeah, excellent. As we've just discussed, absolutely baking hot. But great to be able to talk to you guys, and we'll just share a bit of information, shall we?
Yes. It sounds like a fun time. And you know, Paul, I've had you on my show a couple of times as well too, so it's always very good talking to you, and you have such a wealth of knowledge. I'm looking forward to mining some of that today.
Yeah, you just go for it, Ron, honestly. I mean, remember though, as I say to everybody, I'm no expert. I just sort of dig deep, go for the research, and we just see where it lands or where things land. It's just, I don't know, as one door opens in this sort of sphere of what we're looking into, be it Dogman, Bigfoot, UFOs, another one opens just as quick that sort of confuses and muddies the water a little bit more. I wish we could find some answers, but then it wouldn't be as exciting and interesting if we could.
I was just going to say that. If we didn't have those windy corners, you know, it'd be a bit of a straight road, and I'm not a straight road kind of girl.
Yeah, I like the twists and turns myself.
Yeah, I think that's where we're at with this subject as well, innit? So, yeah, basically, I've got Chris Turner here for weekend, and I know you know Chris, Deborah, and absolutely brilliant documentary maker, or in my opinion, he is anyway. And we'll touch on what he's here for. There's been a story unfolding around Bampton all through 2017, through to as it happens through to this present day, where we were going up onto the cliff tops, me and Bob Brown, who was the Beacon of Light radio host, and a few other people, trying to document the lights that were being seen. But at the same time, it appears that throughout the year, unbeknown to us until New Year's Day, that's when I found out, animals have been mutilated in very close proximity to where we've been observing these lights all year.
Wow. Well, let me stop you there for a second. So what kind of animals are we talking about, and what kind of mutilations?
We've got sheep, primarily. There's over 50 now. Wow. There's roe deer, badgers, and believe it or not, harbour porpoise, the small dolphins, about 3 or 4 foot long. All suffering absolutely traumatic injuries. The sheep are having the throats torn out and the skin stripped off the faces. Now, Chris Turner will back me up, I think, because he's not sat here, but he's in the other room. He's seen the photographs today. The harbour porpoises are having holes bored through the underside of the jaw or in the sides of their head. Bearing in mind, the deer... The deer is straight. The last one I found, it looked like something had exploded out of its rib cage. I say out because its internal organs looked all perfectly intact, apart from one thing. It had had half of its liver removed.
Wow, that's important.
And Deborah, this deer that I found, it hadn't been dead long. Its eyes were black and glossy. I checked the animal thoroughly. Both sides of it, the legs and everything, for any signs of trauma, bite marks, puncture marks, anything. Just thinking about a big cat or anything that could be doing. Not a mark on it apart from the ribs that are just absolutely look like a shotgun's gone to the ribs. But obviously, if somebody took a shotgun to these ribs, it would affect the internal organs as well. Everything looked pristine inside this animal, and the hole is as big as a dinner plate, if not bigger.
That's amazing. And when last time I spoke with you, Paul, we were talking about UFOs being seen not only around the water, but also in the water. And that's kind of odd now when we're talking about this connection with sea-dwelling animals.
That is so true, Ron. You know, I mean, I remember the date to this. It was July the 25th of last year.
Right.
We observed, me and Bob Brown, a triangle of lights under the water off Bampton.
Right.
Bob couldn't see them at first because from where we were looking, they were sort of out to sea and to the right, and his eyes aren't quite as good long distance. So I went down the cliff a good distance, so I was actually level with them, and I think they were about a mile out. It's hard to estimate because from the altitude that we were at, 200 to 300 foot cliffs, you've got 20 to 22 miles to the horizon. But I think they were about a mile out. When Bob got to the position I was at, he could see the lights and had no problem sort of saying that he thought there was steam coming off water where the lights were situated. Now, I've got photographs of them, and I really don't know if it was one solid object. My gut instinct tells me that it wasn't. Three of anything are going to look like a triangle, Deborah or Ron, aren't they? You know, but it did look pretty equal, the triangle, but if it was one object, it would have been huge, and I don't think the water out there is more than 60 to 120 feet. But regardless, these lights were definitely under the sea, and we've got photographs of them. When these lights disappeared, we both turned and looked down the coast towards Flamborough, and it was still daylight, and a huge red rectangle of light lit up on the cliff face. If I'd have blinked, I'd have missed it. Likewise, Bob would have done. But we didn't find out, as I said earlier in the conversation, until New Year's Day, that animals in very close proximity to this had been mutilated throughout 2017. The strangeness of these killings are the ewes, Deborah, weigh about 80 kilos.
I'm having the same thing coming in from other researchers across the country who are looking at Bigfoot and Dogmen research. Same kind of thing. We're seeing animal carcasses that look like they've been cut in half with a laser. No blood on the ground, no drag marks, no signs of teeth, no punctuation marks, no sign of bruising, no hematoma. Fresh, only a couple of hours old, being found with some with innards, Paul. And complete pristine insides. Like, I've never seen it. I mean, I'm like you, I'm from North, I'm used to seeing the pluck out of an animal. It's a messy job. It is a messy job, and this is pristine, and it's happening everywhere, isn't it? At the minute, people are making reports.
It's a strange one, and you know, we were in Danes Dyke, which is where a lot of this has taken place, which again, as I think I touched on when we were talking a few years ago, Ron, these places are around earthworks as well, and burial mounds.
Right.
But we were in Danes Dyke, and it was Mary, my wife, that found them. She says, "Here, look at this. What are these?" And I picked it up, and I thought it was a young polecat. That had been decapitated. But the unusual thing about it, we found out they were young badgers actually afterwards, but I couldn't tell. They looked chocolate brown. I just got some friends who were in more. They knew what a young badger would look like. Anyway, so if you imagine having fur trousers on, somebody had skinned it round the middle and left, and no cuts on this animal, just cut its head off and skinned it so it looked like it had fur trousers on. Now, there was 2 of them in the wood. We've found more roe deer that have been decapitated, but we've not found the heads. And as I say, this roe deer with the exploded in rib cage, as you know, I mean, we haven't really got any apex predators that could catch a young roe deer stag and kill it. So biggest thing we've got allegedly is a fox. So let's assume for 1 second it was a fox, which it wasn't.
It'd be a mess.
Not only would it be a mess, Deborah, they would go for the point of least resistance, and they would have gone through the soft belly or the backside.
The arse end,
this has gone through the ribs and just obliterated the ribs. So, I mean, Chris has seen the pictures. I mean, and I think he's using them for some work that he's going to be doing, and he's quite blown away by them. I mean, the sheep that we found last Monday, the last one to be found, had its face stripped, but nothing eaten, and half of its ear cut off. You know,
it's puzzling. It's because it's not dogs. People, townies say, "Oh, it's dogs." Dogs make a right mess, don't they? When dogs get into it,
they make a mess, Deborah, and they're vocal as well. You know,
exactly.
Yeah, it's never clean. We have coyotes over here in the United States, and I've come across many coyote kill. And you're talking about fur being strewn here and there, and it's not a pleasant sight to come by. What you're talking about is something that seems rather strategically done, as if there was a plan behind it.
And intelligence, most definitely.
That's correct. Right. And where it took a more, I wouldn't say sinister element, because you can't say it's not sinister, what we've just spoke about, is when I started getting photographs from walkers and rock anglers and fishermen of the porpoise, because you realise, I mean, we can't say A links to B and B links to C, but we have to consider that there might be a connection because of the closeness of the things that are happening and the time frames which are happening at the same times. The injuries are in a similar area on the sheep and on the on the porpoise. I mean, it's hard to relate a porpoise death to a sheep death, but these poor marine mammals are having their throats literally bored out, and it's unbelievable. I mean, I think Chris was quite surprised when he saw the photographs today, because I've not shown him a lot of what I'd been looking into. Now, is there a connection to the lights? I daren't say yes, because I simply don't know, but you can't help but think that they might be. On May the 9th, I went up to the affected area with a guy called Steve Ashbridge, and we were going to do a bit of a sky watch, and we got to Ice Point of Danesdyke and set up there. And at about 8 o'clock, we saw one light over the sea that sort of blinked 3 or 4 times. Now, it pretty inconclusive, Deborah. It could have been an helicopter or a plane that were just in a weird position, and we managed to see it. Later on that evening, before it got dark, Steve saw a land-based yellow light. Same again, blinked 3 or 4 times on the land. No trees on the tops of these cliffs. At about 10 o'clock in the evening, and it was dark, this was, I think I said May the 9th. It was May the 9th. All the sheep in the lower fields started making lots of row, and they were clearly disturbed. And I said to Steve, take note at time, which he did. So we left at about midnight and we walked along the cliff tops. That was the highlight of the night, seeing those lights. On the Saturday morning, and I ain't got dates in front of me, but I've just been writing it up as it happens, which would have been the 11th. I went to the fields very early, 5 a.m. Whilst there, I found that roe deer with the obliterated rib cage. I walked back and spoke to the farmer at about 8:30 and showed him the images, and he said to me, another sheep has been killed, you know. I said, oh, when? He said, we found it Thursday morning. So that means it got done sometime during Wednesday evening. Now, we were there Wednesday evening, and I wouldn't put it past it to have been the time that we heard the sheep upset and agitated.
All that racket,
Now, can we relate the lights to it? We didn't see the lights in the field with the sheep. But it just makes you wonder, you know, these lights seem to be seen in association with lots of strange phenomena. I mean, everybody's familiar, who probably was listening, with the Skinwalker Ranch, and they talked about these lights that were luring the Sherman's dogs out into the middle of nowhere, and then they found some oily deposits and never saw the dogs again. And, you know, I'm not saying Bampton's Skinwalker. I'm just saying that in these areas of ice strangeness, it's almost like a paranormal soup of everything. Not just one thing. I mean, bearing in mind, if I hadn't have spoke to the chap who lives in the woods at Danesdyke on New Year's Day, and he hadn't have told me that the police had been to speak to him because sheep had been killed at Bampton, these animal mutilations would have bypassed me. I'd have been sat here tonight talking about our attempts to film the lights over the sea. But turns out that as this was happening, this other unexplained phenomena that shouldn't be connected but must be, was happening in conjunction with it. And it's like I spoke to Chris today, Deborah, and I said to him, it makes you wonder if these areas attract all manner of unexplained, or do they throw it out? Is it coming from these areas? I really don't know.
That's the interesting thing. Are you looking at a window? Is it a portal? Are things drawn there as almost like a magnet because of the energy in order to manifest certain types of things? But whenever you talk about these types of lights drawing things away, not only do we have this at the Skinwalker Ranch, but I mean, if you look back into antiquity, we have the legends of the Will-o'-the-Wisp, you know, drawing people ever off the beaten path deeper into the woods and such. So this is something that has historical context in which we're dealing with. Now, getting back to the idea of the cetaceans being killed, I don't think ever, Paul, in the annals of mutilations has sea animals ever been brought into it. And I find that is something very worthy of documentation, and I know that you're just the person to be on this case. But I think that that's a very interesting thing if we are indeed seeing mammals being mutilated in an area where you are seeing these strange light emanations.
I totally agree with you there, Ron. There is somebody else in the UK that's looked at seals and dolphins that allegedly were mutilated, but I don't. It's hard to. I don't mean hard to say because it's not that hard really, but I don't want to sort of upset anyone. But I've got family who've got trawlers in Bridlington, and the pictures that I was shown of these mutilated seals and dolphins going back a few years now by this cryptozoologist, all had spiral wounds on them. Now, if you know any trawlermen, they will tell you that if a boat propeller hits a seal or anything like that, you will have a spiral wound. And if it quacks like a duck, sometimes it is a duck. So in one respect, Ron, you are correct. And the trauma that these arbor porpoises have received with the huge holes in the sides of their heads and through the jaws, I've not seen before. And as I say, I'm quite happy to show the pictures. Chris will be taking a lot of them away to use in his documentary. And I don't know where it's all going to lead.
I need to get you chatting with Mary at Culpin is what I need to do. There is a little place up near the Moray Forth where everything that you have been described is happening. But I've been fortunate enough to watch it for 4 years. And it's a certain part of the year, normally spring and autumn, deer legs appear within the trees, spines and all kind of things. It's a forest that's been built on a village. There's an actual village underneath it.
Right.
But that was like hundreds of years ago. And you get these accounts of lights that lead you off into the woods. Strange dark figures that some people think might be a cryptid of some kind. Strange signs being left. She's managed to photograph these lights.
Really?
And, yes, and some of them are in colour. Some are red, some are blue, some are yellow. But the main ones of them, which can be seen in the daytime, and she's got them on camera in the daytime, are white.
Right, okay.
So people instantly said, it's the Moray Forth, it's a boat. She said, I'm telling you, it's not. I know this land. I have lived on this land my entire life. And these lights, they're happening at certain times of the year. There's a pattern to it. So I'll get you and her talking because the similar things are being found that you're talking about.
Which is interesting, and she might just come up with something, that I've overlooked. Or likewise, I mean, it's brilliant to sort of knock a few heads together and just see if you can, no egos, that's it. Just looking for information. And I don't know what you think, Ron, but I think that'd be a great idea.
I think it is. I think anytime you can bring more than one researcher into a particular case, that's always essential because you get so many different opinions and perspectives. Now, that leads me now to talk about military involvement. Yes. Are you seeing, increased military, involvement in this particular area, Paul?
Well, it's interesting you say that, Ron. And I've got the photographs to back up these words, what I'm going to say now. The 25th of July, the night that we saw the early evening, we saw the UFO or the lights under the sea. During the daytime, I received a phone call from a chap called David Hind, who lives in Bampton. He won't mind me mentioning his name. He said, Paul, I've just been on a back road from Bampton to Flamborough, which is 2.5 mile road. He said, and I think there's something you need to see. He said, there's some unusual vehicles. So it was a miserable, drizzly day. I could have done with a passenger to take the pictures, but I jumped in the car, camera on passenger seat, and sure enough, halfway down this road, off the road, is a Dodge Ram pickup, an American Dodge Ram pickup, with German license plates, with a huge green container on the back of the pickup. And I mean huge. I mean, it was spilling over the sides slightly, and they're a big thing, these Dodge Rams, as you'll know, Ron. And it had a large dish on the top of the container, a satellite-looking dish, but not a satellite dish. I'll go into that in a moment. It were pulling a trailer that were tarped up that we believe was a generator. Now, that was there probably half a mile at the most, from where we were when we saw the lights under the sea the same night, later that night. So these vehicles were around the area for at least a week. I've got pictures of a triangle-shaped depression in a pea field, which a guy had alerted me to, on a lane called Blake Howe Lane. They were parked on Blake Howe Lane. Now, when I say triangle depression, I don't mean the peas were crushed and there's a shape of a triangle. I mean, there's nothing there except a triangle of earth, and the peas growing all around it. It just looks like a cookie cutter's took it out. Wow. So it just so happens that these these vehicles were there. Whilst on the cliff top, Sam, with Bob Brown, as I previously said, I received a phone call. I'm going to be talking about this at the Outer Limits conference. I received this phone call, and this, hello, Paul Sinclair. Yeah. He said, are you the guy who looks into UFOs and things? So, yeah. He says, right. He says, my daughter's just been coming home from Sledmere to Garton-on-the-Wolds, which will be about 12 miles from, as the crow flies, from where me and Bob was stood. Now, Bob heard the conversation. I said, what's she seen? He says, well, she's seen a large black tubular-shaped object with a glowing red line through the middle. Right. And she's managed to get a few images of it. I said, okay, yeah. He said, there's another odd thing. I said, and what's that? He says, there's a large American pickup parked in a field with a dish on top and a trailer or dragging a trailer of some kind. I says, we've got one here on Cliff Tops now as well. This phone call was before we'd seen the lights. All this was the 25th of July. And bear in mind, we knew nothing about the animal mutilations. I know I'm repeating myself there. We didn't find out about them till New Year's Day. So, yes, Ron, in answer to your question, military vehicles have been seen. Now, I'd like to... I'll leave it open. It could just be a military exercise taking place when things of high strangeness are happening at the same time. That'll be for your skeptics, because that's what they'll throw at us. So we'll just say, well, okay, then that's what it could be. But I mean, what are the odds of something like that occurring? Lights under the sea, American military in the area. I've been told by contacts of mine in the forces that they were microwave technology. I've showed them the photographs on top of the trucks. To back up what I'm saying about the trucks, although I've got the photographs, there's a magazine in the UK called Air Forces Monthly. And that, the November issue of Air Forces Monthly, displayed a picture of one of these trucks, because one of their readers took a picture of one near Staxton, which would have been about 12 miles away, and wanted to know what it was. Now, Air Forces Monthly didn't know. They were of the opinion that they could be SAM emulators, surface-to-air missile emulators. Now, I'm not going to dispute what they think any more than I can say the people I know are saying it's microwave technology, because I simply don't know. Yeah. All we know is we've got this paranormal soup of activity that's taking place in this area, and these guys were there. Yeah. They were also... I've not got the date off the top of my head, but there were also, I think it was in June, a large American motorhome on the old disused RAF Bampton at 6:10 in the morning. And what's interesting about this is that the guy who told me went to take a picture because there was 3 men in white overalls. He said they looked like they were on a CSI cleanup operation, his exact words, and I've got him on tape, which I'll be using at the conference. He said, he says, I went to take a picture of these guys. And suddenly, he said, it was just like an old TV set. All lines came across my phone. He says, and then it just flip, and everything had gone. So it just makes you wonder what was going off. I mean, I'm not trying to create a mystery where there isn't one. And
what happened with you in the helicopter? Do you remember that time? When a helicopter parked right next to your car?
That was on the Wolds. That's probably about 2009. I could be wrong. It might. So somebody will jump down my throat and say you said 27. I haven't got it in front of me at the moment. Yeah, I'll tell you that story. Interesting one. I mean, anybody who knows me, like I always say, me and technology aren't very good. And me and my wife had just bought 2 Nokia phones. Can you picture the little blue and grey ones? Yeah. And we bought them from Curry's that night. And I wanted to do a bit of a sky watch, and she's not really into it, Aunt Mary, but she wanted to come up. She hates me going to these places on my own. Yeah. And I was in my the van I used for work at the time. I think I was a Vauxhall Vivara. Not that that's any relevance to the story. However, a Chinook helicopter. We were on a back road, middle of nowhere. We were next to Easterby Trailers. If anybody wants to Google Earth it, you'll find it. We were next to Easterby Trailers at Cotton, and a Chinook helicopter came over and landed in the field. I don't say at side of us because that thing would have blown my van over, but landed it quite close. Now, that's unusual in itself. Military helicopter, great big one, it landed in the field. So Mary said, I'm a bit frightened, Paul, let's go. And now I'd got an old camera with me that had good night vision. I said, Mary, we're not breaking any laws, let's stay here. Yeah. And I put the camera on night vision and I'm looking, and nobody sent to get out of the helicopter, and it would have picked them up. And so it sat there in silence. It shut down completely. Imagine the bizarreness of that in the middle of nowhere. I'd just filmed a weird aircraft, and I don't think it were a UFO. I'd actually just filmed a weird-looking aircraft, which I've still got the footage of. It sort of looked like a bunch of a bunch of, like a chandelier flying, but I'm still adamant it weren't a UFO because it was blinking and flashing like aircraft do. Yeah. Just a strange thing. So whether that was in connection with the helicopter landing, I can't honestly say, but the most bizarre bit and the unnerving bit for us was that, let's say 10 minutes passed and then the helicopter lit up, lifted and flew away. And then Mary's phone rang. Number withheld. And hello, and went dead. Then my phone rang. Number withheld. Hello, number went dead. We'd just bought them from Curry's. I still got the same number now, 07949 455 941. I've kept it ever since. That's me with phones. I don't change things. But nobody could have known as numbers. No. I just found it incredible. You're not telling me that weren't some connection. Yeah, the odds of it, Deborah, were quite bizarre. And all the activity up on the walls, the farmers, they're all aware of these lights. Lots of them have seen them. But the difficulty is getting people to talk. I mean, it's took me quite a while and quite a bit of nice talking, shall we say, to set up this night vigil to get Chris here. And we're going to spend all night up on these fields. Oh, fantastic. We're there tonight, and Chris is a bit disappointed, I think, because he lined somebody else up to come, and he hasn't contacted him back all day. But that's beside the point. Like, Chris is welcome here, and we'll get this done. We've got good cameras. I've got cameras. Chris has got even better ones. We're going to set them up. We're just going to sit and hope something happens. Let's hope.
Man, I wish I lived 3,000 miles closer. This sounds like a blast. But you know what, Deborah? That means we're going to have him up on a follow-up show, correct?
Most definitely. I've been in a forest in the middle of the night with Chris Turner. Chris Turner's fun to be around.
Chris is. Go on, sorry. Tell me, Deborah.
We went into that forest and we found some bleached deer legs at the side of the car. Chris will attest to this. We went to the forest and we came out and we found a bloody deer leg still with skin on it and hoof. I mean, we put it down to dog walkers, but it was quite strange because there was a skull there and things scattered about and a little trail that had been blocked off with pine trees either end. Good place to be, middle of the night in the Tay Forest with Chris. But
as you know, Deborah, I mean, because you're as intense with this as I am, and Ron is. If you're going to find the information, if you're going to at least attempt to find it, you're not going to find it on internet. The internet does have its uses, and I can search it referencing some things, but to actually get the stories that other people can't say, oh, you've just took that off somebody else, or you've just done that. You've got to have feet on the ground. You've got to get your nose in some proper old paper archives and do the research. And too many people want to just watch what other people are doing. I mean, I heard recently that somebody wants to do a book on crashed aircraft off Eastern North Yorkshire, which is interesting, but
it's a bit cheeky.
There's a few. Well, and I know they're not my property, but I know that I'm the only person that's ever covered ZA610 and XS89. Not XS894, because Tony Dodd did that, but I found other information out and contacted Tony and asked him if he wanted to work with me on the new information. But there's a few tornadoes crashed in unusual circumstances that nobody's ever touched. Because I'll be interested to see how much of my information appears in these books. Not that I can do bugger all about it. I'm sorry for swearing, guys.
No, but you're right. Why? It's really, really easy to just say, hi, Paul, I'm really interested in doing this thing on. Is it okay, and do you want to collaborate? And then I know you say, oh yeah, here's all the info. Run with it.
I'd just say, get on with it, and if you do use anything that's blatantly of mine, just put me a little word in. I'm happy with that.
I think we're all like that. I agree with you on that 110%. You're out there in all weathers getting the info. It's polite to ask you if it's okay to share it. I have the same problem with a map. Yeah,
I can believe it, Deborah, and I've seen some internet wranglings, and I'm sure Ron's had experienced similar things.
Oh, yes. It is one of those most cutthroat businesses that I've ever been into in my entire life. People want to seem like they're experts, but they don't want to go out there and collect the evidence, so they have no problem taking other people's, life work, basically, and claiming it as their own. Yeah, absolutely.
Isn't it? It's like it's like me saying, "Oh, I'm going to write a book on marathons because I've watched a race on the telly." And my friend Lorraine runs marathons, so I know everything there is to know about marathons. It's as ridiculous as that to me. Plow through and keep going.
I think you've got to do, and I don't get too heavily involved in it. I mean, that's probably your new show is probably the first time I've ever mentioned anything like that, because I don't really let it bother me that much, because I know the source of the material that I've found. I made a point of contacting Tony Dodd when he'd done a lot of the work on the. If you don't know what this is, Ron, it's a lightning that crashed on September the 8th, 1970, allegedly pursuing a UFO. So any listeners who are interested enough, you want to Google it, because you'll find a lot about it. It was an American exchange pilot called, I think it was Schaffner, William Schaffner, nothing to do with Star Trek, and that was his name. and this unfortunate man plunged into the North Sea off Flamborough Head, probably about 6 miles off Flamborough Head, and they never found him. But there's all sorts of rumours and things about allegedly UFOs and pursuing a UFO over the North Sea. And like you said, Tony wrote the book Alien Investigator and covered the story extensively. So when I found new information, I contacted him and I told him, and I said, do you want to work with me on it? And Tony said no. He said because of death threats previously. And he said, but I'm quite happy to help you in the background. But basically, he was just interested, I think, because we never... Well, what was interesting, Deborah, I mean, listeners will have to do a bit of research on this one, because I know we haven't got time to go into the full details of it, but just 2 days before Lightning XS894 crashed, allegedly pursuing a UFO over the North Sea, an RAF Marine launch based at Bridlington, which would only be about 6 to 10 miles away from where this crashed, was struck by an unknown submerged object, and it suffered a 12-inch by 25-foot hole in its hull and had to be beached on North Beach. Now, Tony never found that information, and he couldn't have done unless he'd have been a resident of Brid and been into the archives. I found it, and I got the paper trail follow-up. A few days after, now, anybody wanting to know more, just contact me offline. A few days after, a speedboat struck an unknown submerged object. And the guy he'd only got 5 children. He got 5 children on board this boat and himself, so he weren't going that fast. But the boat disintegrated. Oh, yeah. There was loads of UFO reports and sightings. I mean, you mentioned Howard Hughes earlier, didn't you? Yeah. Are you on Howard's show tomorrow?
Tonight at 8 o'clock.
Wonderful. Well, I think I've spoke on Howard's show 3 times, and he's a fabulous talker. He's a great guy, And he read out on air the last time we spoke an email that he'd received. He'll remember this from a guy quite independent, no connection to me, who'd been walking at Bampton whilst we were looking into this unexplained stuff. I think it was December the 14th. I think he'd got this email, and the guy. This is when it happened. And the guy reckons that walking with 2 friends towards Flamborough in the night. The walk that they did regular. On the walk back, I haven't got the exact times in front of me. There was a huge flash of light in the sky, and they talked about it and discussed what it could have been. When they got back to the car, I think he said it should have been 8:15 or 8:10 in the evening, and it was 10:15.
Wow, yeah. So you were talking about missing time and all this kind of stuff that's typical of what people would think about, UFO abductions, alien abductions, and such. Yeah. But yeah, before we switch gears, though, and before I lose my train of thought here, I wanted to ask you one more question, because you said about this triangular imprint in this field of peas. And along those lines, what are we looking at crop circle-wise in this area? Do you ever witness anything in this particular area involving crop circles?
I've not heard of any crop circles, but you see, we're around the cliff tops, Ron, and we do have fields. We've got corn and barley growing, but there's not loads of arable land. A lot of it's just for grazing, sheep and grazing.
I see. Right.
But you'd be brave messing with a man's field in the north. I'm telling you. Yeah.
But if you like, I can tell you an interesting story about a crop circle.
Absolutely.
I went to Wilsthorpe, which is probably 3 miles from where I'm sat now, the opposite direction to Bampton, so we're very close. I went to a farm there to talk to a guy called Brian, not that it'll matter to anybody, Barmby. Brian Barmby, I think that's the name of it, is this farmer, and I want to talk to him about a mutilated sheep that he found on his own farm. And he got on about a crop circle. And he told me, and I think it was 2009, a crop circle appeared in the corner of his field, very close to the road. I said, did you tell anybody? He says, I didn't tell nobody. I'm not having my land turned into a thoroughfare. Yeah. So I said, okay then. He says, but I want to tell you what happened. He says, it was just a circle. He says, and you'll get an idea of the width of it in a minute. He says, I've got an old combine that has no air conditioning. He said, and I was in the field, and when it come time to cut this crop, obviously the crop circle's there. He said, and there's a liver-coloured spaniel in the other side of the combine, late curled up, doing nothing. His dog. He says, as soon as the combine head hit the circle, the dog got up in the cab and started to howl all the way through the circle. He said, this combine was boiling hot. He says, when I were in that circle, it went cold. He said, it took me 3 passes of the combine to clear the circle. And each time the head of the combine hit the crop circle, the dog sat bolt upright and began to howl. Now, that dog obviously sensed something that we as humans weren't sensing. But I think it's quite an interesting story, don't you?
I do. And it brings us back to what I noticed you said earlier, Matt. I really pricked my attention when you said about ancient barrows and ancient sites. Because, A, I've got a trail for you off my husband, and B, that's where my Bigfoot research is leading me. All of those sightings can be put within a short walk of a hill fort, a barrow, a Stonehenge, or an ancient spring. And every single one.
Yeah, you've usually got running water, and that's correct. At Staxton Wold, the Flixton Werewolf, Staxton, we've got an ancient hill fort and burial mounds where the young boys who are now old men saw it about 1948. Well, one of them's passed away, but 1948. That's at Sharp Howe. That is a barrow cemetery. Right. There's I don't know. There's 7. My memory slips. 7 or 11. Barrows there, and all around the area we've got a fabulous burial mound called Willie Howe. It might be one of the most interesting ones in the UK, and I wouldn't say there's just Bigfoot sightings or dogmen sightings. Lots of activity around Willie Howe. But don't you think, guys, that a lot of these dogmen or dog type creatures all over the world are seen around graveyards and burial grounds?
Yeah, I was just going to make that point here in the United States until relatively recently, because of course it catches on like wildfire. But initially, all the dogman sightings were concentrated around Native American burial mounds. And that's something that's very interesting. And if you were to look at the image of the dogman creature, whenever we think of like Anubis dating back to ancient Egypt,
you just took words out of my mouth.
Always concerned with funerary processes and things like that. So I think it's a very intriguing look that whenever we look around the world, different cultures, we see this particular creature involved in, liminal areas, a place where people are not supposed to be. This is the land of the dead, or, some sort of shadowy area between the civilized and the uncivilized. This is the domain of these creatures. This is that twilight zone, if you will, in which they inhabit.
But my favourite place, get your wellies on and get there, because that's... Energy is, I honestly think, Paul, energy is the key somehow. I'm not sure. I know Chris agrees with me and Steve Mera that there are certain places where all activity seems to happen. And I think you're the same, like you have a similar opinion.
I do.
I'm seeing spots on that map. I'm seeing clusters and groups on that map.
Are you finding, Deborah, that certain times of the year are highlighted as well?
Beltane. The old holidays, all the old holidays, and it goes quiet from harvest to spring. So.
You know what? Yeah, Deborah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I don't really care what anybody's religious affiliations are, but we have to understand, whenever we talk about things like Beltane and Samhain and Mabon and things like that, we're talking about a calendar that was linked to the agricultural year. Exactly. The nature, the cyclic idea of nature. So I think that it is of value to look at this particular type of calendar, because it represents this natural ebb and flow within the natural world. And whenever we talk about magic, one of the most magical times was midsummer. And as a researcher, some of the best investigations I've ever done was at midsummer. Yep. Exactly. Something's to be said. Look, we in the 21st century have lost contact and that connection with the natural world. And I think whenever we talk about things that go bump in the night, things of high strangeness, they live outside of our technology. We cannot discern what we're talking about. We can't catalog them. So I think it's best if we look back at ancient ways in order to understand what we're dealing with.
You make some great points there, Ron. Absolutely. On the money. I honestly believe that, and sort of science doesn't seem to work in this outer nowhere, does it? It's just, you get people, I don't mean the clever devils, because the majority of the population will think that science has an answer for everything. And I think they've got to accept that these anomalies, not just the ones that you're into and I'm into, these sort of areas of high strangeness, people have searched for answers in these areas since before documentation, and we've not found an answer, have we? A lot of times the things that are being seen and a lot of things that are being manifesting, we can't even adequately explain them because they're so far out of what we know and understand. Words don't exist.
Yeah,
that's right.
Exactly that. It's whether you see a UFO or a light or some form of intelligent life force, a cryptid creature, you don't stand and write notes. You don't take note of everything around you. It's this shocking, impossible, cannot have happened thing that you spend the rest of your life asking yourself questions about. So even for the witness themselves, it's not ever cut and dried.
It's terrible. You're spot on. I mean, I've spent a lifetime, and I mean it, every day. I can picture these little beings that I saw as a child, and I've got all these little cameos of events that happened. Yeah, but I can't get past. I can't piece A to B or B to C. I know it's real, but it's just beyond me. I don't think we're meant to remember, actually. I don't know.
I was just going to say the same thing. Maybe for some of us, those memories, the little snaps that I get. I remember things climbing out the walls when I was a kid, and it was looking like a rock monster. It looked like it was made of rocks. And I remember watching the sunlight go down in my bedroom and thinking, oh no, because when it got to the windowsill, that's when it had come out of the wall. And I must have only been, I remember I was in the first flat we ever lived in, so I was about 5 or 6, and that is vivid with me.
Yeah.
And I wake up at night and I still feel it.
Yeah. It never leaves you, Deborah. And isn't that strange that you can remember these things? And I don't know whether you've had similar experiences, Ron, but I bet you there's people listening who've had similar experiences that won't openly say that anywhere. Because, A, they can't prove it, so trying to explain it to somebody who just thinks you're crazy is better off saying nothing. Do you know what I mean? I had to deal...
Yep, I've never, I'm not an experiencer, but one of the reasons why I have such a passion for the paranormal is because I've met so many people that are convinced that they had seen something out of the ordinary. That's what keeps me going. It's the people that come to me and say, I have seen something and I simply can't explain it. Not everybody you're talking about are crackpots. Some of these people have valid, statements to make, and they have nobody else to turn to. That's what keeps me going in this business.
Ron, you're so right. And, as you know, they can't all be liars. But I will say something, Ron, and I don't mean I'm some kind of prophet, but you will have an experience.
Yeah,
you will. The experience will find you. I don't know whether it's... I said I don't know whether it's even aware of us, but as you're immersing yourself in this subject, and you've done it more than long enough, I know that, and your knowledge is brilliant. And what I like about what you've just said, Ron, is you're not trying to say, oh, I've experienced this and I've experienced that. You're open and honest, and everybody will believe Ron when he comes out and says this happened or that happened by sheer virtue of your honesty right now. I'm sorry if it sounded a bit long-winded, that, guys. But...
Oh, no. I appreciate that.
Like that. For every single witness out there, I say it over and over and over, we couldn't do this without them. Because it's their stories that not only open the conversation and get people talking about things, that make other people go, well, actually, that happened to me, or I remember when, and it dovetails. And then more people think, well, actually, I think I could tell my tale now. I don't feel so bad now. Yeah.
That's correct, yeah. That's absolutely spot on. Is there anything you want me to pass any messages on before we end? Because I know we've only got an hour, haven't we? To speak to Chris Turner.
That's all we have. Yep.
There was something I wanted to ask you about, actually. My husband had an experience when he was a boy in the 80s, and he's never spoken to anybody about it at all. And the only reason he said to me that he would let me speak about it tonight was because where I had my account, where I saw that strange thing, and where all those other accounts are, there's a hill fort.
Okay.
And the next hill fort to it is Giant Seat, which Chris knows very, very well, and we found a very strange structure up there. And the history at Giant Seat goes way past Boulder Sea, or all the way back. So I wanted to see where the next hill fort was, so I thought, well, I'll see if I can. And I was quite surprised because it was near where my sightings were. At that point, my husband says, that's where I had the encounter when I was a lad. And I was like, what? And he went, he won't talk about it, he doesn't talk about it to anybody because he had a period of missing time.
Right.
And he said, it was on that hill, Debbie, that's where we were, on that hill. And he turned up about 2.5 miles away at home where we are now, an hour and a half later.
It sounds like his whatever he's experienced, and obviously only he knows, or knows the bits of it. The little flashbacks that he's probably got are too painful to talk about, Deborah, you know?
He had 3 friends with him, fortunately. And they're all still friends to this day. And he said, because he said he was all right with me talking about it with you. He said, I didn't see a light. I saw a craft, and it was a light that came towards him at complete speed, he said. And at that point, he doesn't remember anything else. And he remembers coming to, an hour and a half later, all 3 of them sat in a line at the garage on Manchester Road in Warden, as normal as anything.
As he spoke to his friends about it?
One of them watches the sky, still does. I mean, he's 45 now. He was 17, 18 back then. Still does, completely, all the time. 2 of them, like my husband, will not discuss it. None of them discuss it. It's just something that they don't talk about, ever. But
well,
one lad, he watches the sky. He's got more telescopes than anyone we know.
Do you know, Deborah, it might be, I mean, I don't know what is, only you know your husband, but it might be that now that you've spoke about it, he might make the move to see what the others remember from that day, because there's only them 3 experienced it, and one of them might say something that throws a little bit more light on your husband's story and helps him. Yeah,
that's it. And it was just the correlation of that and the burial thoughts that the next one along was where his encounter happened. It's just like, wow, it's like so many coincidences. I don't even believe in coincidences, I'll be honest. So many things are kind of pushing to one point, and this one point is the lights, the areas of activity, the old ancient places, and the things that people are seeing. I mean, we've still got another 10 minutes. We can keep going unless you've got to rush off, Paul.
I'm okay for 5. We're heading. We're heading to Staxton, believe it or not, after this, Deborah.
Oh, I'll have a look on my map, Staxton.
Yeah, well, Flixton. We're heading to Flixton.
Right,
we're going to talk. We're going to talk to a witness, and then we're off for our night vigil at Bampton.
Oh, cool. So you're going to have to come on. We're going to have you back on, I'm afraid.
Well, you want me to pass a message on to Chris Turner, don't you?
Yes, I do. Conferences in the UK. Getting together and collaborating on conferences in the UK, but I'll get hold of him tomorrow. Just let him know. Oh no, are you with him tomorrow?
Yeah, we're doing tomorrow night as well.
Just tell him, sling me a message when he gets home.
Yeah, and obviously, Ron, if we cite anything tonight or anything's experienced, we shall be in touch tomorrow and let you know what the score is.
I cannot wait. And actually, Deborah, while we have Paul on the show, I say that this would be a great show for next. Are you available next weekend, Paul?
We have Alison Wilkinson on next week.
Oh, that's right. I do apologize.
Yeah,
that's right.
Well, I'm sure I'll work in with you guys, and if there's any way I can help or we can have another natter, I'm more than happy.
Oh, we will be having you back, definitely.
Because we didn't sort of plan out tonight, did we? And we've rattled along for an hour, and we've not touched on anything specific. I spoke on a show, for over 3 hours a few months or a month ago.
Yeah.
And we only covered one question. Yes, unbelievable.
Oh, wow.
I submitted 20 questions as they asked, and we just covered one. So it was quite bizarre, really, that I were panicking in case I'd have enough information, because I've spoke on Midnight in the Desert twice already and done 3 hours.
We will definitely do it again. You go.
You just broke up a bit there, Deborah.
You go and enjoy your hunting, your investigation.
Do you want?
And me and Ronald just carry on till the end.
I'm going to make a flask.
Yeah.
Well, do you want me to put Chris on briefly so you can have a natter?
Yeah, if you don't mind. Yeah, that's cool.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Right.
Do that.
Yeah.
Are you okay with that, Ron?
Absolutely.
Oh, and just before I go, then I'll just like to plug my books. Anybody wants to see them, you just go to Amazon or PayPal and look for Truth Proof. Just type it into a search engine and you'll find a link to the books. I'm not trying to sell them. Read the reviews.
Right, yeah, go get them read.
If you think, right, hold on. Let me find Chris.
Yeah, get them read. And if you can't find them online, they're all on Amazon, actually. And they're on truthproof.web.com. And get hold of me at debbiehatswell@gmail.com, and I will give you Paul's email, because Paul's fantastic about giving his contact details out. The gentleman that's about to join us is Christopher Turner, and this is incredibly exciting because Christopher Turner is a filmmaker who I think has probably done the very first look at witnesses to cryptid creatures in the UK, and I don't think anybody else has done that before. And he's done it on his own back, and he's not been funded by anybody. And Chris Turner is the reason I do what I do today. Before Chris Turner, everything I did was a secret. Are you there, Chris? Yeah. Can you hear me?
Hi, Debbie. How you doing?
I'm great. I didn't know that you were with Paul today.
Yeah, I've been trying to plan this. You know what it's like with this thing. You've got witness sightings coming in, and Paul's up here in Hull, then you're in Scotland, then you're down in South somewhere, and then I'm in Cannock. So I thought, why I've got a bit of time free, I'd come and I know there's a lot. Paul's probably just told you all about it, what's going on up here. There's loads of stuff going on. So, yeah.
I'm finding similar, I'll be honest, with the Bigfooters. But what I wanted you to come on is A, because of Elusive, so you can have a quick chat about that, and B, I want you and Ron to get together because Ron is really interested in conferences. The UK wants some cryptid conferences, and you guys need to chat. So I will send you Ron's details when you're back from your expedition with Paul. So
yeah, cool. Yeah, do that.
Yeah, tell us about Elusive first, because that's the big one, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, well, as you know, Elusive was never meant to be 2 years in the making for a start. I came into this thinking, I can get my head around this subject. I can find out what's going on. A bit, obviously, naive of me to think that. But it turned out 2 years later, I'm still investigating this stuff because there's a lot more to it, isn't there? Than I just thought it would be something really straightforward. I thought everyone would be seeing the same thing and explaining it the same way, and that's just absolutely not what's going on at all, is it?
No.
It really is everything from. I mean, I'm still doing this thing. I've spoken about it before about the Bigfoot flip flop, where I'm in between whether it's a real animal, corporeal, is it something supernatural, how is it? Where is it living? All those questions that you've been asking yourself for 35 years.
Yeah.
You've now, thank you very much, passed that on to me. So now I don't sleep much, wondering, asking these sorts of questions. And Paul, as you know, he's like-minded. He's the same, but he's like me. I was a bit ignorant. I thought that I'd be able to do this sort of, partially from the from my own home, sitting in the armchair, and there's just no way you can do that.
No.
Trying to make this film, you can't represent the witnesses all over Britain and every case of every animal just by sitting at home and pretending that we're all assuming, we're all theorizing what this thing is.
Theory's good.
Theory's great, but ultimately, as you know from all those decades, you're dealing with a lot of skeptics, and in order to, sort of justify our stance, I need to be able to answer at least some of those questions to myself, and I've become a lot more skeptical. I don't like it. I have been forced down some avenues, and I've been forced to accept that I don't have the answers. Yeah. And that's not a very nice situation, is it, to find yourself in? Because I don't like it. I don't like not knowing. And so I'm actually now in a similar position to all the witnesses that I've spoken to, and you'll know this.
Yeah.
It's an awful situation. I mean, it must be 10 times worse having seen it and still not knowing what it is.
It's really hard to answer, isn't it? It's like, it's the witnesses that keep me going. Every time I get that bit where I think, because I know what you mean. You find out that it's happening and you think, right, well, what are the clues? So you get this whole host of clues and you have to start going through them, and you're knocking them up and you're thinking, no, that's weather, that's bushcraft, that's that. It's that little tiny percent that keeps me interested, the ones I can't explain, and the witnesses. Because the minute they start to talk, I forget every doubt I've ever had. It all comes back again, and I'm back there again, and I remember what it felt like. And you're watching them as he's telling you this story. For some of them, it might be the first time they've spoken about it out loud at any point. It was like that for me with you when you filmed me. Oh, it's so freeing to just say it all. So I know as you've gone around the country, I bet a lot of people like me at the minute going, oh, I'm so glad I did that. Because you just say it and it's done, you've said it. And that's my validation for me, that I've stopped hiding and gone, no more. Yeah, there's loads of me out there and I'm just going to find every one of them.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm like you. You find yourself, you sort of take that responsibility on. My position now, I'm not arguing with the skeptics as much as I used to, because I felt for the witnesses. I was sort of really trying to defend the standpoint with these skeptics, even though they were asking all the right valid questions. You know, it's logical. The questions they're asking us are totally logical. You know, and I've gone from being really sort of aggressive and with these guys to sort of embracing them a little bit. I don't like doing that, but it's necessary. I mean, if they're pleasant and and understanding, that's all we're asking for. Just be a little bit more understanding. You know, you're used to this. It's sort of relatively new for me, even though I've come from that alternative media with ufology, where you're dealing with backbiting in a very similar situation. I wasn't expecting that when I came into the cryptid arena. That was the last thing I thought was, even in Britain. I mean,
it's like the UFO thing. It used to be like that. When Elusive come out and people watch it and they see people telling their stories, they will think, you know, I'm going to tell mine because that reminds me of what happened to me. And there'll be a massive wave, and those cryptids, the critics, the skeptics, will still be in that forum in 10 years' time having the same argument with the same people. Won't get us anywhere.
Well, yeah, you know? Absolutely. That's what they want to do. I've seen my position on this now is that there are some of those skeptics that really don't want to change the stance. They're not interested in changing their position. They want us to take the scientific approach and use the scientific method. But then when you present them with a scientific analogy about the way they're approaching this whole thing, they don't like that one bit.
Yeah, and they flip it. Well, you've proved that, but what about this?
Absolutely. So
you show it, and then you go, well, you've proved that, right? But what about this?
Yeah, and then of course
that goes on forever, that, doesn't it?
And then it's all anecdotal. That's always the comeback. It's anecdotal. All you've got's anecdotal, and that's fine by me.
Yeah, right. That's fine by me.
That's great. I mean, I knew when I came into this subject that that's all we're going to have. What I want now. And you know this because we've had this discussion many times. I'm chasing that experience. I probably shouldn't be. It will probably, if something does happen and I do manage to have an experience, I probably wish I didn't. But well, in fact, I probably know. I'm pretty sure that I'm not going to enjoy it. But in the end, to do I just thought 4 months would be enough to present the information and to get the point across. But it's ended up turning into this 2 years of just being up and down the country and on what sometimes seems like a wild goose chase, because you do lose heart. You know, like me and Paul were discussing today, you go out and we can't, you know, sometimes we're out and we never, social media is great, but you can't always be telling people what you're up to, because 99% of the time nothing happens on these expeditions. Nothing at all happens, and you're always chasing, you're always waiting for that one experience, that one day when you're going to catch something, and we're hoping that tonight's going to be the night, because I'm putting myself in all the right positions, at the right place.
That's it. Just keep trying. That's all you can do.
Away.
On that note, I'm afraid we're going to have to end it now because they have us on a timer. I'm afraid on Paranormal UK Radio Network. So. Put you on the spot. Will you come on the show?
That's what I was going to ask him. Yeah, I want to hear more.
Exactly.
I'm glad to come on, Deb.
Cool.
No worries. Yeah.
I will get in touch with you when you get back. Just send me a message when you're back from visiting Paul and an update, because I'm dying to know what, and I can give him a tiny update on the show next week when we're on. and then we'll get you on and we'll have a good old natter. Yeah.
Cool, yeah, let's do it. No worries, yeah.
Right, so it's good night from me, and it's good night from
Ron, yeah.
And it's good night from Chris and Paul, and you've been listening to The Crypto Realm with Deborah Hatswell and Ronald Murphy on the Paranormal Radio Network UK.
On the Paranormal UK Radio Network.
I always get it the wrong way.
That's okay.
Wouldn't even be a show if I got it right, Ron.
Absolutely not. No. Now we know it's you, and you haven't been replaced.
Yes, but I might be here next week, but Ron will be here next week.
That's right.
Crypto Realm. So until next time, thank you very much. And if I get fired, I'm on YouTube. So, bye, everybody.